But let me take you to a special case in this. And I do this with a little trepidation because although this podcast will drop within hours of recording it, typically we hold these for a week before they're available to the public so that our members can get it. But I'm going to say we're just going to hold this until Tuesday morning. And the reason is I want to ask you about something that's going to happen next Tuesday. And I don't want it to be out of date. Because I think there is a place where all these stories come together. And to me, I find it particularly appalling. And that is the New York mayoral race, where you've got a guy, Andrew Cuomo, who is a sex abuser, who is corrupt, is a liar, did a lousy job as the governor of the state, and should have come nowhere near the being the mayor of this biggest city in the United States. Essentially, in a race against a challenger named Zohran Mamdani, and Zohran Mamdani is a New York assemblyman. He is accomplished in that regard. He's a very, very smart guy with, I think, very thoughtful proposals for New York City. The campaign against him in the past few days has turned vile and racist. It is playing against the fact he's of Ugandan Indian background. He's a Muslim. It's playing against that. It's using the fact that he's a Muslim to amplify the fact that he's actually against killing small children in Palestine, and saying he's. And I saw one today that said he's a existential threat, which is a term people use. I don't think they know what it means anymore. An existential threat to the Jews, and. There's another element of this because he's been a social democrat, which, by the way, is what the majority party is in virtually every country in the developed world. But here in the U.S., we ostracize. And so they're saying, well, he hates the Jews and he's a socialist. But really what they're saying is, look, he's brown. We can't have this guy who's a foreigner be the mayor. Now, the current mayor of New York's a black guy, but he is a pro-Trump black guy. I mean, he's a particularly odious guy in himself. And I'm just wondering, as you watch this race and watch how they're treating Zohran Mamdani, how do you react?
Yeah, I was waiting for the shoe to drop. This is the post-war and terror normalization of Islamophobia and anti-Arab racism. You mix in it with the usual racism that we see. You see the usual players combining their powers like evil Voltron to take out Zohran Mamdani. This includes those who I think we've seen the money now, like the pro-Israel AIPAC lobby that says, Muslim brown guy speaks out against Netanyahu, speaks out against genocide in Gaza. Threat, take him out. Ooh, Wall Street, Democratic Socialist. He actually wants the rich people to pay their taxes. We can't have an AOC or a Bernie or an Elizabeth Warren or Zohran Mamdani in New York City. My God. Take him out, right? He's an existential threat to us. They're combining their powers. And what was so shameful, and I know this is coming out on Tuesday, that on Friday, Representative Clyburn, a Democratic leader, came out publicly in support of Cuomo, praising his character, even though 4 years ago he was the one, along with the entire Democratic leadership, telling Cuomo to resign. This is, to me, David, and I posted about this, it is like if there was a breaking point for me walking away from Democrats, it's this. Because it's not lost on me as a brown person who's in his 40s. Zohran in 10 years will probably look like me with a beard as a child of Muslim immigrants. What they're doing to Zohran is what they would have done to me and people like me, right? Folks, it's so disgusting that the Cuomo campaign digitally altered a photo of Zohran Mamdani and gave him a bigger, bushier, longer beard. Because bigger beard on brown men means what? Hamas, terrorism. And then they're calling him anti-Semite, even though all the questions he's been asked, and only he's been asked this, repeatedly show he's not anti-Semite. He just doesn't want Palestinians to be occupied, and he doesn't want, corrupt government of Netanyahu to run roughshod over international law, and he wants the genocide to stop, which, by the way, is now a majority position, right? So
it's a majority position. I just want to add, it is a majority position held by 70% of American Jews. Right?
But exactly, and a majority of Jews voted for the Democrats, and a majority of Jews in America are not aligned with AIPAC or ADL, and hate Benjamin Netanyahu because he represents a threat to the establishment. David, right? I think you're seeing it in real time. There's no subtlety, especially with Clyburn coming out and Democrats openly coming out. Like this, Clyburn comes out and promotes him. 2 days, I'm sure you saw this New York Times article where the New York Times did a deep dive in the DNC. DNC strapped for cash, desperate. So donors are walking away from the DNC. They have no money. They have the lowest favorability rating, even lower than Trump, who had this lowest favorability rating in the Quinnipiac poll. And they're like, how do we win over the kids? Let's go for Cuomo against this young guy who's galvanizing, so many diverse Americans with this really fresh, really energetic, creative campaign. He got AOC to come out. He's got all these people of color. Let's destroy him in his tracks with the most racist, horrific ads. And let's say he's against Jews and he's against capitalism, and let's crush him. And let's crush him as a unified force with the full weight of Democratic leadership behind it. David, let it burn, man. Let it burn and let something better come.
I am totally with you. First of all, Zohran Mamdani represents nobody so much as a potential mayor of New York as Sadiq Khan, the mayor of London, who is also Muslim, is also, believes in a kind of similar view towards the economy, and has been a great mayor of London, has been reelected as the mayor of London. I think he's exactly what New York needs. I would add something to it, though, and this gets it even more pernicious. Today, also, just as Clyburn came out against Mamdani, so did Larry Summers, former Treasury Secretary.
I didn't see that.
And he came out against him because he said he was a democratic socialist. Socialist being a word that is used by, sort of the establishment class in the United States for the past 100 years to say somebody who wants the economy to actually be fair, to take care of people who can't take care of themselves, and to actually operate like every other developed economy in the world except ours. But we come up with this code word, socialist, we say you can't do it. And what I'm getting at here is that there is an alliance between the Wall Street corporate crowd and this group of racists. And Cuomo is playing to them. And he's saying, well, look, I'm the only one. Cuomo is the Trump wing of the Democratic Party. Just like Eric Adams, the terrible mayor of New York, is the Trump wing of the Democratic Party. And they like him. And so they're using every tool in the book, from racism to slurring his very sensible economic proposals to try to stop him. And I
just saw his post is remarkable. The Larry Summers post, just amazing. The fact that he just said this: every American is a citizen of New York City. It's so much a cultural and financial hub of our country that what happens in New York City is consequential for all of us. And I'm not an expert on the exigencies of the details of New York City economic policy, but I do think the Democratic Socialist program would be profound and dangerous for New York City, for the Democratic Party, and for the USA. Can't make this up, David.
No, you can't, because first of all, I've known Larry Summers for 35 years, and anytime he has ever said, I am not an expert, he's lying, because he thinks he's the expert on everything, okay? But secondly, in terms of this, we are seeing a deeper problem, and I think it's particularly acute because, frankly, some of the best leaders in the Democratic Party right now embrace ideas like health care for everybody, like trying to make affordable housing available to everybody, like trying to, protect the environment and care about how the economy affects all of us, as opposed to tilting it in favor of the few with the most resources. And they will call that socialist. They will call it socialist every time. But you know what else it is? And this is the thing that nobody will talk about. These are the policies that help people of color. The people who need the help from the government the most because of the institutional racism in our society are people of color. And so when they attack socialism, what they're really saying is, I attack programs that help the people in the bottom fifth of the economy, help the people that need to rise up, help the people that do not have health care, and those are heavily, predominantly people of color. So, I think it's important for people to understand that the anti-Mamdani economic rhetoric and the anti-Mamdani racism and the Trump border racism are all the same racism.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that you're saying and connecting the dots, because what I've said is the twin sins of this country have always been white supremacy and capitalism. I'm talking about unfettered greed. Let me break it down. Racism and greed. And you're seeing the intersection of those two sins, which are people, though those who are in power who have profited off it, are unwilling to confront or reform. In the intersection of what you're seeing right now is the attack on immigrants and also the attack on Mamdani, right? Because the establishment, which includes the gatekeepers, are so threatened by Black Lives Matter. You know this, I know this. You had the conversation with them. They were very threatened, folks, privately. They were very threatened by Me Too, right? They were very threatened by wokeness, very threatened. These are even the donors to liberal causes and the Democratic Party, right? They thought they were being replaced. They see a Mamdani and AOC and Elizabeth Warren and these others. Oh my God, they're coming after me and my wealth. And I don't want reformation. I want restoration. Let's go back to the 90s. Let's go back to neoliberalism, the good old days, right? This is too much for us. So let's have the status quo, and we'll have our buddies in power, and we'll have a guy like Trump in check, like it used to be, right? And there'll be a reset. And what you're seeing is people, oftentimes, not just people of color, but poor people, poor white people. But it's always been, people of color say, no, we don't want restoration. We want reformation. We want this country to finally stretch and expand itself and be the country it's always promised, itself and others that it can become. We want that country. So we want reformation. We want change. The establishment is not helping us. The institutions are not serving us. They're serving the elite, the 1%. And then any person who comes out and says, I want to challenge the establishment, what do they do to him, David? Outlier, socialist, freak, radical. It'll destroy everything. And the funny thing is, these people are the ones who destroy the economy.
They use other code words too. They call the squad. They come up with a term and they say, "Oh, that's the squad." Well, who are the squad, right? And why are they targeting the squad? I'll go a step further than you will, although I may bring back the word restoration. But I think American capitalism killed American democracy.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is that we've become a system where post Citizens United and post the decisions of this Supreme Court, the few control the outcomes in our elections.